ओम श्री परमात्मने नमः। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। श्रीमद् भगवत गीता साधक संजीवनी 5th chapter Karma Yoga Action in Krishna Consciousness Verses 7 to 12. Description of the disciplines of action and knowledge. Now the Lord describes the marks of a karma yogi. Verse 7. Yoga yukto vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriyaha sarva bhutatma bhutatma kurvan api na lipyate. The karma yogi whose mind is quite pure, who has controlled his body, who has subdued his senses, and whose self is the self of all beings, is not tainted by actions, though he acts. Comment. Senses are said to be subdued when they are free from attachment and aversion. When senses become free from attachment and aversion, they can't deviate the mind. A striver can engage them in any activity as he wishes. When a person attaches importance to the worldly objects, his mind becomes impure because he has desires to acquire the worldly objects. When he has the only aim of God realization, his mind is purified more quickly than it is purified by any other method. Therefore, fixing of an aim plays an important role in the discipline of action. While following the discipline of action, a striver must renounce bodily comfort. If he engages himself in indolence and heedlessness, he will not be able to follow this discipline. An important fact. Actions and objects are transitory and kaleidoscopic, while we, the self, are permanent and uniform. So the actions and objects are continually abandoning us. If we abandon them, we can attain salvation or supreme peace because the two belong to two different classes. The objects and actions are to be utilized in rendering service to others without having any pride, because in fact they are theirs. This sort of service involves no effort. We can serve others by objects and actions only on developing generosity in us. Here one point needs attention, that we ourselves are generosity personified. Therefore, generosity involves neither expenditure nor effort. We should be pleased by seeing a man happy and take pity, and feel sad by seeing a man sad. Seeing a happy man, we should wish every being to be happy, and seeing a sad man, we should wish no one to be sad. The Lord in the next two verses describes the attitude of a Sankhya yogi while undertaking activities with the senses. Verses 8 and 9. Neva kinchit kromiti yukto maneta tattva Pashyan Shrinvan Spirshan Jigran Ashnan Gachan Swapan Shwasan Parlapan Visrijan Grahanan Unmeshan Nimishan Api Indriyani Indriyartheshu Vartanta Iti Dharyan. The man who is united with the divine and knows the truth believes, even though seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, walking, sleeping, breathing, speaking, emitting, grasping, opening and closing the eyes, that he does nothing. He holds that the senses move among the sense objects. Comment. Here the five actions, seeing, hearing, touching, smelling and eating, pertain to the five senses, that is, eye, ear, skin, nose and tongue. While walking, grasping, speaking and emitting, these four actions to the five organs of action, feet, hands, tongue, genital organ and anus. Sleeping is an activity of the mind, breathing of life breath, and opening and closing of the eyes of the sub-life breath, named kurma. Thus, by mentioning these 13 actions. The Lord has described all the actions which are performed by sense organs. Organs of action, mind, life breath and sub-life breath. It means that all actions are performed by the body, senses, mind, intellect and life breath, etc. The evaluates of nature rather than by the self. A man considers himself the doer of those activities which he performs intentionally, that is, by applying his mind and intellect, etc., such as reading, writing, thinking, seeing, and eating, etc. But there are several other activities such as breathing and opening and closing the eyes, which are performed unintentionally. Then, why has the Lord mentioned in this verse that a man should not regard himself as the doer of these activities? The answer is that breathing is a natural activity, yet in breath restraint, pranayama, etc., breathing becomes an intentional activity. Similarly, eyes can also be opened and shut intentionally. So the Lord has mentioned that a man should not hold that he is the doer. Secondly, the Lord, by mentioning breathing and opening and closing the eyes, wants to convey that as a man during these activities thinks that he does nothing, so should he consider himself a non-doer while other activities are performed. The Lord now in the next verse describes how a bhakti yogi remains untainted by actions. Verse 10. ब्रह्मणे आधाय कर्माणि संगं त्यक्त्वा करोति यः लिप्यते नासा पापेन पद्मपत्रम् इव भासा. He who performs actions, offering them to God and abandoning attachment, is not tainted by sin, just as a lotus leaf is not tainted by water. Comment. The body, the senses, the mind, the intellect and the life breath bestowed by God belong to Him. Therefore, how can a devotee following the path of devotion regard the actions which are performed by the body and senses, etc. as his? He holds that all actions are being performed by the Lord for him. He is merely an instrument in his hands. A devotee following the discipline of devotion while living in the world and performing actions in order to offer them to God is not tainted. In the same way as a lotus leaf living in water is not tainted by water. The desire for the world, having a disinclination for God, is the root of all sins. Desire springs from attachment. Where there is no attachment, there is no desire, and so sins can't be committed without attachment. All undertakings are covered by defects, evils, as fire by smoke. But he who has renounced hope, desire, and attachment becomes free from all defects. When actions are performed in order to be offered to God, having abandoned attachment, the striver becomes free from the stock of all sins. Therefore, a bhakti yogi totally becomes free from sins. In the next verse, the Lord explains how karma yogis perform actions. Verse 11. Kaina manasa buddhya kevaler indriyar api yoginah karma kurvanti sangam tyaktvatma shuddhaye. The yogis, men of action, having abandoned attachment, perform actions merely with the body, mind, intellect or merely with the senses for the purification of the self. Comment. The yogis who perform actions offering them to God are called bhakti yogis, while those who perform them in order to render service to the world without any selfish motive are called karma yogis. A karma yogi, while performing actions, regards the so-called his body, senses and mind, etc. as the world's, not his own, because they have their identity with the world. If we give a serious thought to it, we come to know that the body, etc. are not ours in any way. They belong either to God or to nature, Prakriti, or to the world. Thus, it is an error to regard them as ours and to have the sense of mind, attachment in them. The term kevalya, merely, has been used here to root out this attachment. The Lord in the next verse explains the merit or glory of Karma Yoga by positive as well as negative inference. Verse 12. Yuktaha karma phalam tyaktva shantim apnoti nashtikim ayuktaha kama karina phale sakto nibadhyate. The soul attains to everlasting peace by abandoning attachment to the fruit of action, whereas he who works with a selfish motive, being attached to the fruit of actions through desire, is bound. Comment. The renunciation of the desire for fruit and also renunciation of attachment, because in fact it is not the fruit of actions which is renounced, but it is the desire for the fruit of actions which is renounced. That fruit may be reaped either immediately or in future. When a striver regards nothing as his, does nothing for him, desires nothing for him, it means that he has renounced the desire for the fruit of actions. A man's prarabdha, fate, is decided by the stock of his past actions, and then he is born in good and evil wombs. In human life, the actions which are performed produce impressions, but when he renounces attachment to the fruit of actions, the actions can't bear fruit like the roasted seed, and they change into inaction. Because of the effect of the actions which are performed without the desire for the fruit of actions, the latent impressions of the old actions are reduced to nothing. Thus, the cause of his rebirth melts away. The fruit of actions is of four kinds. First, visible. The fruit of the present actions which is visible immediately as satisfying one's hunger after having a meal is the visible fruit. Second, unforeseen. The fruit which will be reaped in future in the form of favorable or unfavorable circumstances, etc., and is now accumulated as the stock of present actions is unforeseen. Third, received. The fruit of past actions. The body, wealth, property, and favorable or unfavorable circumstances which have been bestowed upon us as a result of the past deeds. Fourth, unreceived. The fruits yet to be reaped in future. The favorable and unfavorable circumstances which we have to receive in future as ordained by destiny. Prarabdha karma. Out of the four kinds of fruits of actions, the visible and the unforeseen depend on the present actions, while the received and the unreceived ones depend on the actions of the past. When a striver does not desire the visible fruit, nor does he feel displeased or pleased having received it, nor does he expect the unforeseen one, nor is he attached to the received one, nor does he feel happy or sad having received it, and nor does he desire the unreceived one, then it is said that he has renounced the fruit of actions. A vital fact: if the actions which are performed in order to acquire the worldly materials are performed for the welfare of the world, having the aim of God realization without any selfish motive, they can lead a man to God realization. It is also mentioned in the scriptures that the God can be realized through chanting, meditation, good company, study of the scriptures, and cognition, etc. On the contrary, it is also mentioned that he can't be realized through actions such as penance, etc. How to reconcile the two? The answer is that in fact God is not attained through any action. He is also not a fruit of an action. God pervades everywhere, everything, incident, circumstance, and person, etc. all the time. He is ever attained to everyone, and everyone abides in him only. No one can ever be separate from him. But a man being attached to the perishable body, senses, mind, intellect, and objects, etc., which are the evolutes of insentient nature, has a disinclination for God who is his. The spiritual discipline is to be practiced in order to wipe out this attachment or affinity. Om Tat Sat. All glories to Sri Partha Sarthi, Lord Shri Krishna. All glories to Bhagavad Vani, Srimad Bhagavad-Gita. Sri Hari Arpanamastu.